Welcome back, everybody, to What Would Churchill Do? And boy, oh boy, could we use his wisdom, wit, resilience now more than ever? I feel like Dr. Churchill, Winston Churchill's grandson, every time we reconvene, it somehow just gets more chaotic here. And we are shooting this on Tuesday. And of course, over the weekend was the shooting and attempted assassination at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which, in and of itself, even on a visceral level, right? It's so sad. And the oxymoron and the contradiction, I suppose, of what's supposed to be such a, fun evening of, levity and humor and celebrating the First Amendment, with that unexpectedly in the mix. And I turned to Rob, my fiance, we were watching in real time, who and I said to him, this is truly like real life tragedy satire that plays out and writes itself, right? You have this near tragedy, and then it's like, okay, let's just, keep things moving. The show must go on. And as they should, in my opinion, right? As they should do. But I think it just shows how numb we've become and the state of things, right? So before we get into the $1 million question, there's so much to unpack. I have a feeling I know what your grandfather Churchill would do. But just immediately, when you saw this, what did you think?
Well, I think the visceral sort of instruction from the mind and the very being, is to flee, fight, or freeze. And for everybody who was in that room, I was not alone in that response. Most people were frozen, and most people, they couldn't even, get up from the chair to try to find some kind of cover because there is no such thing. When you have a vast room with so many people inside huddling around tables, I think the best performance was the one that people stayed on, drinking their water. Because, it was too early to have any food. So we were not fed, we were not given any wine or anything. It was just water available, and most people, they did that. Not very many people jumped under the tables fearing for their lives. And of course, a lot of the journalists who are there, they've been in war zones. And so, this sound of gunfire is not alien to them, especially when they saw how many protective guardsmen and security people were all around. I don't think that anybody was very fearful. They were very much disturbed, of course, like you said, that the show got stopped. People were very much upset that this night that everybody had invested into participating in this great celebration of the freedom of speech, and of course the great celebration of seeing other people like us, journalists on the front lines of sharing truth with the people and with the power, telling truth to power, and being able, to say from the heart that this is what I think about the state of our republic, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I hope we can do. And this is something that we do weekly together because it is our position not to interpret the news and give to others, but simply to absorb and somehow by osmosis to bring to the world the truth. Now, we all differ about the truth because the truth is made up of very many different facts. The fact remains that when you have a person who is using the very basic right to object to tyranny, which is, to bear arms, and trying to stop the other very basic right that we have, the right to free speech, this contradiction alone within the esteemed republic we live in, our beautiful experiment that we call America, on the 250th year of its existence,
That's
it
right.
proves in my mind how vital the Constitution, how alive it is,
Yeah.
how much it's a living document, and how much we all enjoy, our participatory democracy. So in some ways, I must say I was honored to be there.
You were there?
Hmm.
You were in the room?
Yes.
What? I buried the lead. We've been talking offline. I didn't even know this till just now.
Well, we didn't talk since
Oh,
the last time that we had a show
wow.
together.
Somebody shared the plot twist for the show.
Well, it's a show for journalists, and if you know, my primary thing is that I'm a journalist. Besides everything else that I do, since I was a very, very young man in college, I had started writing for the college paper, and I never
Oh,
stopped. So I
okay.
enjoy this once a year because you see, everyone who is involved in this business of sharing, events, the truth, and oftentimes, quotations and misquotations. But that's why we speak about what would Churchill do, because he himself was also a journalist, and most people
Yes.
tend to forget. He wrote 65 books, almost 16,000 articles, 1,500 policy studies. I am well behind him.
Well,
I've only written 28 books, maybe, I don't know, 3,000 articles and a few policy studies. So I have ways to go. But I
well,
don't think that Churchill would ever describe anything else as being a journalist because, as you know, that's how he made his living, even though when he was in the army, he would send,
I
his reports and his books from India, from the northwest frontier of India, and what's the days, Afghanistan, where he fought. But as you know, at that time, there was not much money to be had by the Imperial Army. The way he made money to maintain himself in style was by submitting to the newspapers articles weekly from the Boer War in South Africa or from the
that's
Cuban War.
amazing.
He fought in 5 continents and always writing, always writing.
Well, let me interject because first of all, it gives me hope given that this has been my lifelong work, similarly to you and to him, right? And fighting for truth. And I
If you
didn't know
like
that.
to,
So
I
the
can make an effort now that it gets rescheduled, maybe to include you in the Washington D.C. Correspondence Dinner if it's going to
yes,
happen this year, which I'm not sure it will,
I would
because
love that.
they said now that they're going to do it in the new ballroom to be safe instead of the Washington Hotel. Who knows?
Well, I have to say, this blonde has learned a lot in the last. However, like that you were there, that your grandfather was a journalist. I did not know that. And I was going to say, not that my background's in entertainment journalism, right? So I've been to many front row of these huge publicized, often, a lot of security, these events, right? Whether it's, the Grammys, Emmys, I haven't so much in a political sense, but for me, and you were there, right? For me, what was so impactful, and I wonder if it will really, I mean, you'll have a better sense because you were in the room and in the environment, but what struck me as so different than any of these attempts that we've seen, and you're seeing people from all different political backgrounds in their gowns, right, and an elitist sort of event. And let's be real, a lot of these people and journalists, if you want to call it, with rhetoric that causes things like this, right? If you're going to paint someone like Trump as a monster, as a fascist, as this, what's going to happen? These people are going to come in and be the martyr, right? We've seen it time and time again, but it really got me thinking to see them again in their gowns and being actually part of it, and then potentially in the crossfire, right? For something that by and large, an environment they've sort of helped create. Will this actually create unity, do you think? I really wonder that. Like now it's impacted them on a personal level, and I'm sure that they were scared shitless. Like I saw the footage of them in there. Now that it hits close to home, will they change their tune? Was it like, wow, shit just got real? Excuse my language, but will there be more unity? Will they actually change their tune now that it hit that close to home, or will they just keep going on with the same thing? I really do. I wonder that.
My approach, and from understanding the vibe and the energy in the room, and from what I saw from everyone, again, the moment that you freeze, and I assure you, everybody was frozen. Everybody.
Yeah.
The movement that was created was only by the highly trained security service people,
Yeah.
and I mean people in various stages of uniform or people who dressed like the guests, etc., who they had been trained for such eventualities, and they sprang up, between the weeds, and they showed to everybody what you should do. And the simplest direction they did, of course, besides removing, the ministers and, of course, removing the vice president and the president and whatnot. It was to advise people who had still their wherewithal to get under the tables. And that sounds so silly because, if you recall, and I don't know if you do, you're a very young person, but you didn't have probably experience in the Cold War. Our teachers would say the same. If you get the nuclear alarm, you just climb under the desk. There's no way, that you get safety from a nuclear attack or any kind of attack.
Right.
It's like the animal, in the savannah with a huge neck that she hides the ostrich, that she hides her head in a hole, thinking that the exposed body of hers will not become victimized by the tigers and the lions or the hunters. So sticking your head under a table with cloth, I don't think it's any protection. So a lot of people, they were wise enough to try stay where they were, as I did. I didn't even consider going under the table because, you got 12 people or whatever under a table covered by cloth. The moment that somebody farts, it's going to be more deadly than the bullets that might come from the outside. So to avoid that awful eventuality, most people stood where they were.
Oh, wow. Pick your battles. So you
Well,
didn't.
yes, I mean, you choose,
Wow.
what you have. At least, we like our aesthetics, and the optics are not good, for people, putting their head like an ostrich under a table and having their ass sticking out, for all the world to see. On
Like
the other hand,
I'd at
I
least like
must
my
say,
dignity. No.
yes, there is no much dignity left, after that,
Oh, brother.
Once you see that, you cannot unsee it, and I saw plenty of it. So I'm
Did,
still laughing about it. I also heard about the particular effluent, aromas that came from some people who completely handled under the table, covering themselves with a cloth, thinking that, they are safe.
oh my gosh.
It's terrible. But the
Did,
consequence, which I think, besides all the humor that we must give to this situation, is the basic reality. For the first time in their lives, all the very skeptical journalists, all the very cynical personages, all these people who they think that because they appear in front of the camera and they spout, their 2 cents worth of wisdom,
it strips
they
that
got
away, right?
scared. They got scared and they understood
Yeah.
that in the same foxhole with the president. So while previously they were kind of guiding people, saying, as you recall, like Kimmel, I think the previous night, he
Yeah.
made an assassination attempt
So
comment,
gross.
like encouraging, this against the president, and several others, mind you, the very previous night of the dinner. And then they are all together, and all of a sudden they understand that in this messy republic of ours, this American experiment on the 250th year
Yeah.
of our effort to exist in harmony, in unity, and in peace, we are all in it together.
But do you think that did you
Where
get a
one gets hurt, everybody gets hurt.
I mean,
And they
yeah,
understood
it's
that for the first time. When they were removed at an arm's length, thinking that this president got to go and we don't care if he gets assassinated, it might improve things, all of a sudden they understood viscerally inside their very body that this
that's
is
what I'm
for real and we are all in the same boat.
that's
One
exactly
of
it.
us goes, we all go. So I think this is the greatest change that could have happened. This is the greatest celebration of freedom of speech. This is the
Wow.
greatest celebration also of the right to bear arms at the same time. Even though those two rights they came into conflict, this is the time we need to celebrate the fact that all of the voices of American
Yeah.
journalism, all of a sudden, they are with the president, even though they hate to admit
I'm
it.
saying.
They are sitting with him. They are fearful for their lives, and they understand that the wanton menace of violence has no place in our country,
Yeah.
and you must snuff it
And
out.
I love what you said, and it might be hard for people to wrap their brains around, even as mine is sitting here listening, you know, the celebration of both the First and Second Amendment. And someone could go, what? But I actually really appreciate that because it shows the complexity. It's not all black and white. And you're right. And I do hope that there is a sense of unity. You're exactly right. It's sort of like the ultimate equalizer. And maybe this had to happen in a sick, twisted way for people, like I said, for it to hit close to home and to show how important and how much weight these words carry, right? Because it could all be stripped away like that, despite beliefs, this, the other thing, in an instant. And like I said, it's the great equalizer. So I could definitely see that. And I gotta say too, I definitely give it to Trump in this. I turned to Rob and I said, could you imagine, like, how many near bullets does this guy have to take? And he just gets up and keeps going. I would be personally so rattled, so shaken. And so, no matter where you are, I'm not the biggest Trump fan in the world, but no matter where you are, it's hard to not see that. That resilience in that to just keep going when quite literally faced with death. So with that, I want to end this with, like I said, the big question: what would Churchill do? Because I know a couple things. I know that there weren't I don't think there were direct assassination attempts toward him, but I know that there were plots uncovered. There were near bombings, things that were dodged, like the Operation Long Jump, right? That was a plot by the Nazis to try to take out him, Roosevelt, and Stalin in Tehran. But nothing, there were brushes with death, but nothing quite as direct. And I know that he also was asked about it and was handled everything in his usual style with like cigar in mouth and a drink in hand and wit and levity, which I think is the most important
Yeah.
thing a leader can do. So,
Yeah.
if he were here today and say he were in Trump's shoes, what would Churchill do?
I thank you for posing this important question because it brings everything to the head. And although history has been, very, very lucid about describing the life of Winston Churchill, some people tend to forget that he was almost assassinated 61 times. 61 assassination attempts against his life. And always by the divine grace of God, he survived. And not without getting hurt. He got hurt a couple of times. But I think I see a bit of parallel with Donald Trump. By divine grace, when he was hit by the sniper, he just turned his head
Hmm.
and he got his ear nicked instead of, his brain exploding, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., etc. In the golf course, and the other guy, and this few days ago. So I think that if you're a leader of essential power, people will hate you, some people, for very many reasons. And if you are
Yeah.
impactful, like Donald Trump said, they try to take you out because they're afraid of what you can accomplish. So they did that 61 times with Winston Churchill. And what is important to recall is that every single time that he survived, especially the most pivotal one time he was negotiating to bring the French into the Union right as France was being overrun by the Nazis. And when he went, he flew for the third time to meet with the French Prime Minister Daladier. The very woman that Daladier was with, she was a pro-Nazi sympathizer, and she came at Churchill with a kitchen knife. And thank God, the detective who was with him unarmed here and continued. And what did Churchill do? He asked the French Prime Minister to bring out a bottle of the good cognac, the Armagnac from the south, to celebrate that they're still alive or that he's still alive,
I love
even though
it.
it was the wife or the woman, the girlfriend of the French Prime Minister who tried to stab him to death. So he was funny in that way. But another instance into which he was going to take the underground in London, and one of the suffragettes tried to push him on the oncoming train at the very last moment, and the only way he was saved is because Winston Churchill's, my grandmother, Clementine, she pulled him back and she saved him in the very last moment. What did Churchill do? He didn't chastise, the suffragette or anybody else. He just said, Clemmy, let's go have a nice dinner at the Reach. I'm never taking the subway again.
I love it. I love it. That says it
You got to
all.
celebrate life. And I think in this instance,
Love it.
unfortunately, we were not given any food. Unfortunately, Donald Trump was overridden. He said, let the show go on. But the Secret Service agents and everybody else said, no, no, go away. You got to go into hiding. But to give him credit to the president, he wanted to continue with the dinner and have
Yeah,
the party continue, if you will, because he understood that the threat had been neutralized.
right.
But as you know, the trained security people, they have protocols that they have to adhere to, and they can override any decision by anyone about how to deal with a situation like that with an armed shooter, because they were very certain that there were other people who were going to come in waves after this guy, because this guy was so uh, amateurish in his approach, regardless of all the threat. He was an amateur. He bum rushing the barricade, the first one, hoping he's going to get through, and there were another five barricades, if you will, of armed men that he had to cross. He never thought really through, although they say he was intelligent, well-educated teacher. Still, he was an amateur. But what he did, it shook us, it
Yeah.
woke us up. And I think all the journalists now, they stand with the president in front of the firing line, knowing that what's bad for the president is bad for them, is bad for the country. And that's the first
Yeah.
time in the past that they realized that because they were all there. And they all got their heart, be given to them, in a plate.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think it's such a great way to wrap this up. Like everything, it's sort of taking it for what it is, the good with the bad. There's a part of me that's definitely, obviously, anybody with a pulse can see that we're in such a deeply broken, hurting, violent time. And there's a part of me that wondered, is this going to be like the 60s, the subsequent, JFK, MLK, Malcolm X, like is this history repeating itself? But on the flip side, I'd love to end right now with what you just said, right? Celebrating the freedom we have, that here, as you said, in our 250-year-old experiment, that we do have the beauty and liberty to call out our very establishment and government and, the freedom in that, and, hopefully coming together in all of this. And, at the end of the day, that you lived to tell the tale and you're here with us on what would Churchill do. I mean, does it get better than that?
And what would Churchill do to add to this, the little cherry on top of the cake, is that I'm officially registered as the United States candidate for the US Senate on behalf of the great state of Florida as an independent of the
Wow.
Lincoln Party. So
Congratulations. Well, we'll
August
cheers.
18th, the primaries, you will recall me and obviously vote for me, I hope. And then in the
Yes.
general, but here I am as a candidate, and I
There
took
you
that
go.
decision, very much in light of the fact that we've got a life to live,
Yeah.
and we will not be disturbed by all the
Yeah.
naysayers, the
Yeah.
haters, and whatnot. And you got to live a righteous life and do the right thing. So that's why it was drafted against the white supremacist person who runs this on the other ticket, the red ticket. And I was drafted to do this, in order to do the right thing with civil rights, with humanity, and to maintain our constitutional integrity for everybody who is an American. So
I
God
am
bless. Let
there.
us have a victory. We need to win this. Remember,
Yes.
Dr. Churchill in the United States Senate will not stop being a journalist, will not stop, having this
I
tete-a-tete,
love it.
sharing with the world what Churchill will do. But this new Churchill, also the American Churchill, will do some things that maybe his grandson might remember few generations later to say, yeah, we did something.
There we
We
go.
preserved the republic. So I wanted to announce it here because, again, this is a time that we get together. We might as well say victory. We want victory because without victory, there can be no survival. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless all of our people.
Indeed. Wow. I would be honored to be part of it. I'm on board. And you know what? I will be there like your grandfather, nearly assassinated with a drink in hand for you, like the woman at the White House Correspondents' Dinner who grabbed a bottle of wine despite all the shooting. That will be me. I'm there. And how exciting. Godspeed. Let's go.
God bless America, and thank God for saving our president this time. All the rest doesn't matter. He's a brave man, and we saw that in action. He wanted to continue with the dinner, and that is a sure sign that he is a Churchillian and he understands the same basic principle of life. When you survive, you must celebrate. You
Indeed.
cannot
Maybe
cry
you'll
in
be
the
next.
cup.
Maybe I'll be next. And it all
Celebrate.
started here.
Yes, let us celebrate life. God bless you, Taylor. I hope to see you soon, and let's work on the campaign together and with Rob. Cheers.
I'm there.
Victory,
Cheers.
victory, victory. Bye bye.
Bye bye.